Buongiorno a tutti, mi fa molto piacere salutarvi.
Good morning, everyone. I'm very happy to welcome you to our webinar organized by our exhibition The One Milano. Firstly, I would like to thank the ITA office in New York, who was our partner for this initiative, together with Director La Spina and Paola Guida. All the office helped us in this endeavor. We're here to present you the One Milano exhibition that will be held between the 13th and 15th of March in Milan, together with the other exhibitions, MICAM, dedicated to shoes, and MIPEL, dedicated to bags and leatherware, and in the other exhibition, fashion and jewels. I would like now to show you a video that will explain to you what the One Milano is. You will find the fall, winter, and the spring, summer collections in this video.
Questo è The One Milano.
This is the One Milano, the outerwear exhibition, the fashion exhibition, the exhibition of precious, high-quality, well-made items, and this slow fashion exhibition. Together, Orietta Pellizzari will explain to you what we mean by slow fashion at the One Milano. Orietta is an international fashion advisor. Good morning, everyone, and thank you, Elena, for introducing me. I'm sharing my presentation with you today, dedicated to slow fashion. Slow fashion is a macro concept, is a lifestyle. That's the message we want to share with buyers at this moment. We want to tell not only a style of product, but also a lifestyle, a macro trend. It's interesting to find out where slow fashion comes from. Everything started with slow food, which is the exact opposite of fast. The concept of slow starts from food and arrives to apparel. So there was a sort of evolution. Slow fashion means that slowness is a quality tied to sustainability. It means producing items with the right time cycle, respecting the specific characteristics of the natural world. And this is why slow fashion became an ever-evolving macro trend. We wanted to talk about this topic today because slow fashion is one of the ways in which we can interpret the Italian twist on sustainability. So, as you can see from this picture, the Italian slow fashion is a combination of ethics, crafting, community, environment, culture, heritage, innovation. It's clear from this picture. You can see here the innovation, a beautiful pair of boots, leather boots. They're going up a stair made of an innovative material tied to the upcycling world. And then we also have the idea of preservation. What are we preserving? We're talking about the preservation of processes and resources that are required to make apparel, to make an item of clothing, a bag, a shoe. These are the values of sustainability. We're talking about animal welfare, respect for people and the environment. We're talking about local resources and local production. What I'm talking about today is a truly Italian journey. I'm showing you again the picture of these boots that represent our country, because today I'm going to tell you more about the journey we made through our country, through small companies that support this trend. You are buyers and you're looking for a product that respects these characteristics. This is why today we're going to show you the Italian slow fashion experience. We have selected brands with very specific ingredients, with a very specific concept. The first one is that they don't have trends, but they are inspiring you to have fun. This is why these companies don't offer products that are out of trend, out of fashion after one season, but they are suitable for all seasons. They also offer genderless garments. Some of them have offered genderless garments for generations. Another important component of slow fashion production is that products are suitable for all body shapes. No races, just humans. This is also an important ingredient. Another thing is that they don't have an age limit, but they're suitable for all ages. These items can be worn by people of all ages, and this is very important, especially for the US market, because this market really needs genderless items with a real personality. And of course, we're talking about slow fashion products, not fast fashion ones. These companies also offer permanent collections. They have some core elements in their collections. And this is a crucial ingredient in the One Milano. And they also offer custom-made items. A slow fashion brand is a brand that takes some aspects, some negative aspects of the industry into positive ones. Let me explain what these positive elements are. The first one, local is better. The production takes place in a specific region, in a specific community, and this is a positive trait of this slow fashion production because you are aware of where the product comes from. Another ingredient is the idea of small. Good is small. Consumers now love small brands. When we talk with buyers, we often realize that they already know everything about big brands, but now they're looking for small brands that take great care in their production. Let's now discover some of these brands in the slow fashion world. We'll start from a region in Italy, Piedmont, and from a small brand which is well known in the US market and also in the Japanese market, as we saw in our last webinar. It's a knitwear brand. In these pictures, you can see how they manufacture yarns, how they combine different threads to create specific thicknesses, etc. This company controls the origins of these yarns of linen, silk, cotton. They use other special yarns like alpaca, which is blended with silk or mohair wool to create new combinations. And there's also this very slow fashion concept of experimenting, of mixing all the new techniques. We can see here a senior worker and a younger worker. One person passes down her knowledge to another one. But at the same time, they innovate. You can see here the slow movements, the slow progress of the various steps. Sometimes we read the description and we learn about the production, but we don't know the details. Here are the details that make a slow fashion brand a great brand. Let's now move to another Italian region, Tuscany. This company is famous for its woven bags. They take small strips of leather, they paint it, they prepare it, and then they transform it into small strips that are then woven together to create a bag. You may see this kind of bag in a store, but it's much more interesting to know the process behind it. This is one of the ingredients of slow fashion. Here's another example. This is a company that produces Python items, Python bags. They are experts at processing Python skins. In this case, we see a representative of the younger generation. She experiments, she mixes new and old processing techniques. You can see this machine that is used to polish the skin, to give it a natural look. And you can see that it takes time to do that. You need harmony to do that. This is another Italian region. We're now in Lombardy on Lake Como. This company takes what the community has to offer, and in this case, we have the art of jacquard fabrics. They have very complicated looms. They are able to create very colorful combinations and decorations using this material, which is a traditional material of that area. This is the same company. They focus on seasonless and sizeless clothing. In this case, you can see a skirt that turns into a dress. It's combined with other pieces so that it also becomes a full outfit, like a suit. You can see that the same type of fabric can be interpreted in different ways. There's another aspect important to slow fashion. I'm talking about upcycling. This is part of the slow fashion movement. It's like when we talk about food, we don't throw anything away. This is a very important trend. I like to mention, I always like to mention data. Only in the USA, the volume of clothing thrown away each year has doubled in the last 20 years. It went from 7 million to 14 million tons. Just think about the world and the amount of clothing thrown away in the world. When we buy new clothes, we should ask ourselves, what will be the next life for this apparel? We also visited another company in Tuscany. It's important to know that historically, Tuscany is an important region for the production of knitwear. Now they have a more complex and more industrial process. This is part of the beauty of slow fashion. They can turn an artisanal idea into an industrial one. They take leftover fabrics, process them, and create new pieces and new accessories. Let me tell the story of another company. This brand has always focused on raincoats. This is an item of clothing that comes from the military world. In this case, they take used apparel, they reuse the yarns and create new pieces. So they go from the recycled yarns to the finished good, and they add all these small details. In this way, they are preserving a culture. You can see all the details, the loops, the buckle, the buttons, tiny details which are rediscovered and reinterpreted every time. This is another idea of slow fashion.
Slow fashion is obviously also has to do about comfort and relaxed casual. I like to show you these pictures because it's a modern outfit of a young consumer who mixes a more classic with a more relaxed style. And well, comfort or relaxed are other keywords linked to the pieces presented in one of the sections of the exhibition. And I want to show you another company in another Italian region, Veneto, a company specialized in furs, wool, shearling, and in this case, this is a very modern, extremely modern piece, an oversized shirt, double-faced piece with cashmere wool and shearling. And here there is the concept of a seamless piece, so hiding all the structural details to give such a seamless look and effect, which is very clear also on a different type of item, the parka waistcoat, where the alpaca wool is mixed with shearling, but here we're talking about knitwear. So imagine, think about being able to work on softness, seamless look, so harmony in terms of weight, so lightness, and also maintaining a genderless size. So these are the details of a timeless piece of what we call the slow fashion trend. Slow fashion also has another characteristic, which is that of repairing clothes. And I like showing you this concept as a very young concept. Young generations, as you can see from these pictures taken from some of the in-store events, you can see that repairing mixed with personalizing, creating details, well, these are all elements which are appreciated and created by young generations because they appreciate the long life of a piece, of a product. So a long-lasting product also translates into the concept of aging as part and parcel of the product being long-lasting. So the more a product ages, the more it will be, the more wonderful it will be. For a buyer, this detail is really important because they can buy a new piece knowing that it will be a good investment. And here I'm going to show you another example. We have an influencer, Asian Canadian influencer, and I want to share this concept with you. This influencer, which here is actually showing two Italian brands. One is Italian Japanese brand and made in Italy, and the other one is Italian made in Italy. And this blogger shares with his Gen Z generation, why it is an investment to buy a product, in this case shoes, that after 2 months, 6 months, 18 months, 36 months, a product that changes and becomes more and more beautiful and acquires more and more personalities and characteristics. And this is certainly one of the key elements to understand the concept of slow fashion. And now let's move on to another important element, which is part of sustainability, which is the concept of masterpiece vintage. And here I want to tell you about a story regarding re-editing in the fur industry, in the fur world. I'm going to mention something, but I'm not going to reveal everything because then another speaker will talk more about it. Well, here we have slow fashion seen as the re-editing of a vintage item, starting from a real story, which was the protagonist of an iconic, very important film, which is in the cinemas everywhere right now. And we're going to go behind the scenes of this film. And this is what led us to find out, to discover a company that opened their archives and took some of the items that were part of this film, and they modified and readapted and redesigned, reused these products. And this was done thanks to the know-how of the workers, their craftsmanship, and the creative skills of these people who could readapt a past world to the new world. And this was extremely appreciated. Now, before leaving the floor to the core of the presentation, I would like to conclude just like you do with a trend. Well, a trend always has a color range, and in this case, this is the range of slow fashion colors. So these should start from the message itself of slow fashion. We have 4 color families regarding the type of brand or product and consumer. So let's start from the first meaning of slow fashion: solidity, reliability, strength, the Mother Earth. And so what is the best tonality? Well, browns, reds, yellows, sort of burnt yellows, blackened yellows. And here we've got some renewed details like salmon, military green, more earthy colors, or some seasonless colors. And then we can see a different range, another range. Slow fashion is also about optimism. It's about maturity. So how can I combine maturity with optimism? Well, I can take 2 colors, which are blue and fuchsia, also in the different shapes, which is one of the trends of the season. So fuchsia symbolizes inspiration, liveliness, intuition, and blue is about longevity and optimism. So I've got this crossing, this blend of violets, purples, blues, fuchsias, reds. So this is a color range that is typically slow. And then we have another characteristic, which is the world of greens, of the eternal life, and or tones that are typically associated with nature, with sustainability. So we go from a very lively colors like chlorophyll green to a more toned down green blues, or earthy greens, or military greens, just like the raincoat I showed you before. And to finish, to conclude, here are some basic essential colors: the whites, or the colored whites, those colors defined as neutral. So when there is a sort of season transaction, so the pastel colors, which in the higher part of the picture were sort of darkened by black, and in the bottom part they were brightened and with more light. So I'd like to now conclude my presentation, and thank you very much. And I'm going to leave the floor to the next speaker. Sorry, I didn't have my mic on. Thank you very much, Orietta, for your presentation. I'd just like to tell everybody, the buyers, that you can send all your questions that you would like to ask the speakers in the chat box, and we are going to answer during the webinar or at the end of the webinar, or even after the webinar in the following days. Orietta mentioned a sort of revival of materials and models, vintage models, designs, to make them modern as possible. Well, this revival was done by one of the most famous fur companies with a very long tradition, which was contacted by a very important film. I'm not going to reveal anything else. We're going to see what's behind the scenes of a star's wardrobe with presentation by Cesare Gavazzi. Good morning, everyone. My name is Cesare Gavazzi, CEO of Fureco, producer of the Fabio Gavazzi brand. Thank you, Elena Salvaneschi, for introducing me, and Orietta Pellizzari for the very interesting presentation. What I'm going to tell you about is a real story which translates the concept, that reflects the concept that you've heard so far. So please, we've got a video now.
Bene, ecco quello che è successo.
Well, this is what happened. In November 2020, we were contacted by Metro Goldwyn Mayer through the Italian production office, who asked us if we were willing to create some fur coats for the film House of Gucci. Of course, we were interested. They had a top-level cast, quite a few Oscar winners, and directed by Ridley Scott, but especially her, Lady Gaga. The fact that MGM had chosen us to create the fur coats that Lady Gaga would wear in the film made us all at Fureco really proud. We then learned that MGM had chosen the Fabio Gavazzi brand after watching our latest shows and finding out that our company was founded almost 100 years ago, and this was enough for them to trust us. After a few days, the production team sent us some photos dating back to when the story took place, taken from some magazines and newspapers of the time. In some of them, Patrizia Reggiani, wife of Maurizio Gucci, wore a demi-buff mink coat. Today's mutation is called glow, having a very basic silhouette and quality. In fact, she wore it before getting married. In others, she wore a chinchilla coat and another mink coat, much more premium pieces, to reflect her new social status, having become Mrs. Gucci. Those who saw the film remember the phrase, "Please call me Mrs. Gucci." Other pictures of the fur coats were taken during a runway, showcasing the first and famous collection created by Tom Ford for Gucci. Fabio Gavazzi brought together the style office and the designers to develop the project and define the first style sketches to be submitted to the movie's costume designer. The schedule was very tight. In fact, Lady Gaga's fitting was planned for before Christmas in Rome, so we had less than a month and it would not be enough. So we had the idea of using some pieces from our archives. There was a beautiful chinchilla coat, mink coats, and the other requested pieces. And it was also an opportunity to convey a message about the reuse of existing items, but that only expert and skilled craftspeople would be able to handle. And that's what we did. The pieces were practically identical to the original ones. The fitting required only small changes, and the result was exactly at the level that everyone expected. So what's behind the scenes of this story? Well, this certainly meant putting our company, organization, style office, modeling department, laboratory, the legal office under great pressure. But above all, it was about sending out a message that is very topical. Fur is a natural, long-lasting, reusable product if handled by expert hands. It is a product that does not pollute the environment because it is completely recyclable, therefore totally green. So it perfectly represents what is now called slow fashion. There are other products like fur coats that can be defined natural, but how many of them can actually be restyled, reused, and take on different shapes so as to be considered almost as new? I don't want to sound too biased, but I think that only fur coats have these peculiarities. And this last topic, I think, should be food for thought. The fashion industry is going through a really difficult time. It is accused of being one of the largest polluters on the planet due to the use of synthetic materials and the problem of plastics in the environment, which produce well-known consequences. So the industry is trying to reinvent itself as green by using raw materials derived from recycled plastics, plant-based leather, and so on. Although it is actually hard to know what really happens in reality. Many economic analysts agree that more than recycling, what we're doing is a rewashing. And then there's the problem of fast fashion, products that go out of fashion after a season because style trends, colors, sizes change. Or the huge business generated by those big companies that manufacture their products in the Far East, use, for example, like the concept of disposable items at very low prices, which are impossible to manufacture in our markets. But they enter our markets, they're used for a season and then thrown away. For almost 100 years, we've been doing something different. We use natural products that are completely recyclable and biodegradable. Our suppliers live in geographical regions where people need to adapt to what the environment has to offer. They need to hunt, breed fur animals. If you think about the weather conditions in some regions, on the US-Canada border, to Finland, Denmark, Russia, China, but also Namibia, just to mention the other hemisphere, entire populations can continue to exist thanks to these activities. 2022 will see the full implementation of the fur mark, the new certification system for furs. We were one of the first companies in the world to obtain this certification, which guarantees the full traceability of our products, our ethical standards, animal welfare, the origin and manufacturing quality of products. It is based on a keychain system similar to blockchains that certifies every step of the product's transactions. The big fashion houses were the first to ask us to adopt the system, and therefore, around 3 years ago, we started to analyze this system in collaboration with the LVMH group. Each final product will have a traceable serial number for the fair work system, but this is also to guarantee the authenticity of the product itself. Since we also work for some of the most famous fashion houses, it is important to obtain the certification. It has been very hard and complex, but this will give a new definition to the ethics of the fur industry. Every stakeholder in the system should adapt to this, otherwise they're out. I have now concluded, and thank you very much for listening.
Grazie Cesare per il tuo intervento e arriviamo
Thank you,
alla fine
Cesare.
di questo nostro webinar con
We're approaching
l'intervento
the
di
end of
Francesca De
our
Logu.
webinar. I will now give the
Francesca è
floor to
giornalista,
Francesca De Logu. She's
musicista e
a
ancora
journalist,
insieme è un
a
manager delle scelte
musician,
e
and
ha
many other things.
Upcycling,
She's an
una
idea manager,
redazione che fa il focus sul
and
mondo
she's
della
going
fattoria,
to give
un
us a
mondo assolutamente
presentation
importante per
on
noi,
the
dal
current state
punto
of
di
the
vista
world of
aziendale,
retail, which is very
specializzato
important
nella
for us
cucina,
and for you,
un
listeners.
mondo che lei ha affrontato cercando di dimostrare che cosa c'è di impensabile in
Today, she will
realtà
try
è
to
dietro le
demonstrate that
fronte.
what we think is
Vai
unthinkable is
Francesca.
actually around the corner. The floor is yours, Francesca. Thank you, Elena, and thank you, dear listeners. Good morning to you. I think that in America now is almost lunchtime. As Elena said, I'm a journalist. I'm surfing between different realms, many trends and many other types of cultures. I have focused on fashion and economy in my life, and I always try to find harmony between things, as Elena said. Today, I have prepared for you a presentation that I hope will give you inspiration. The title is The Unthinkable, because there were so many things that were unthinkable until a few years ago, or even a couple of months ago when I prepared my presentation. They seemed unthinkable at the time, but now they are very well known and widespread. We read about them in the newspapers. So during my presentation today, I will talk about 4 future/present scenarios of the world of retail and shopping. And then I will focus on 4 habits that I think we should leave behind us. Let's start with the first scenario, the first shopping scenario. That's the one I was mentioning. Some months ago, it sounded impossible, but now we're hearing about it more and more. I'm talking about the Metaverse. I'm sure you've all heard about it. So what's the Metaverse? It's a virtual reconstruction of reality through technological tools and augmented reality. As you all know, fashion has always been an important industry that reflects social changes. It's always been a pioneer, in a way. In the last 2 years, we witnessed a great social change because of the pandemic. Our lives are now much more digital than physical. We are now used to staying home more. And this led to an incredible acceleration of the digital world, of the virtual world, which will lead in the future to a parallel reality. According to Morgan Stanley forecasts, by 2030, this will account for 10% of the luxury market, for a total value of 50 million euro, according to forecasts, 50 billion euros. Sorry to interrupt, we're still seeing the first slides. I'm not sure if you are changing slides. I'm not. Actually, I have switched slides. If you have the presentation, you may be able to open it. I'm sorry. I think we have a small hiccup here.
Eccoci. Quindi se riesce ad andare
Here
avanti
we are. Please, let's move to the next slide. I think you can all see it now.
Perfetto. Perfetto. Ecco,
Great.
sono immagini giusto come dire di accompagnamento alle parole, diciamo, sono solo più che altro quasi dei pannelli, dei titoli, insomma,
general titles and pictures to support my presentation.
Come dicevo, appunto,
as I was saying,
per il metaverso sta aumentando in modo
the fashion
esponenziale.
industry is more and more interested in the metaverse and the digital world. And there are fashion houses like Balenciaga, for example, and Gucci, who have focused on this topic. For example, Balenciaga is now in the process of creating a business unit to explore the possibilities the metaverse has to offer. And there are other brands like Dolce & Gabbana, Gucci, and other brands, for example, Maison Margiela, Diesel, who are exploring the metaverse and the virtual world. So in a few years, along with the traditional shopping experience, consumers will also have the opportunity to discover this new virtual shopping world. I'm going to move on to another scenario, but of course you can ask me all your questions at the end of my presentation or at the end of the webinar. The second scenario is what I call emotional handmade. Next slide, please.
Emotional handmade paradossalmente è esattamente l'opposto del metaverso. Cioè
sounds like a paradox, but this is the exact opposite of the metaverse. The pandemic has created a strong polarization. On the one hand, our lives will be more and more digital, but on the other hand, we have a need to
parlava prima Orietta
feel
Pellizzari,
emotions, to feel the slow attitude that Orietta was talking about. We need to have products that will last in time. Handmade products, long-lasting items, sustainable items. Why is this important for the future? Because according to neuroeconomists and sociologists, the emotion conveyed by artisanal items are very important for future consumers. In all the reports that I've read, they always highlight that consumers are above all people, individuals. They are human beings who act based on emotions. And this will be crucial for the world of retail. According to some forecasts, the handling and management of emotion will be very important. When we talk about client management, we will have to pay a lot of attention, not only to our business plan, but also to a sort of emotional plan. We should focus on the items that generate emotions and feelings in our consumers. But there's also another consequence of the pandemic, which alas we're still living through. There's another scenario that I have called sensory landscape. It's all about the senses. Unfortunately, during the pandemic, some people who got COVID, so a large part of the global population, suffered loss of senses for some weeks or even months. In some cases, they lost their sense of taste and smell. Some of these people lost their senses for many months.
Come lo usavamo prima e anche il tatto
But because of the pandemic, there's another thing we should highlight. We cannot use our sense of touch as we did in the past. We cannot touch physical things anymore as we used to do. Neuroscience is focusing especially on this idea. This sort of sensory disability has also a positive side. The other senses have grown and developed more than before, and there is much research focusing on this. In this moment, we are developing new senses. It sounds incredible, but that's what's happening, even though we're not realizing it. We have other senses along with the traditional ones, along with sight and taste, etc. We have the sense of well-being. They call it perceptors.
Dei sensi che accanto a quelli tradizionali sono un po' come dei vettori di positività che noi stiamo
sviluppando. They are a sort of vector of happiness. Vectors of positivity, because everyone needs positivity in their lives. It's the consequence for retail. Consumers in the future are going to look for sensory experiences, the experiences that they can get through their new senses. This will lead to a series of very interesting projects. Some of them are already in the development phase. For example, in the future, we will be able to touch different fabrics through our devices just by touching the screen of our smartphones or computers or tablets. There are some companies who are now developing fabrics with the therapeutic effect that release substances that we can breathe in, activating our sense of smell and feeling better. Other companies are developing special embroideries that convey a sense of well-being when touched. So the world of retail will be tied to the senses in the future much more than now. And technology will help in this. Next slide, please. The final scenario is the rise of the N revolution. I called it this way because luckily the world is becoming more and more inclusive. So we are witnessing this revolution, the so-called end consumer. It's a neutral consumer. It doesn't mean that they don't have a sexuality, but it means that this consumer likes to visit neutral places, genderless places. This doesn't mean that we won't have a women's wear fashion and a men's fashion in the future, but it means that shopping places will become more and more genderless and essential in the future. Next slide, please. Along with these 4 scenarios, I wanted to share with you 4 habits that I think we can evolve and transform into something else to face these challenging times. When I talked with retailers, I realized that there were some attitudes and habits that we should start changing and evolving. And I highlighted 4 of them. The first one is collecting data without taking into consideration a very important element, which is the individual. I call this an old style of collecting data.
In qualsiasi modello di business al centro i dati del consumatore.
Ma quello che business model needs to put data from consumers at the center. But it's important that we change our approach to data analysis. And it's also important that we share data within our team. I realize that many entrepreneurs in the retail world aren't used to share data with their teams. Sometimes they only share it with their close collaborators or colleagues. But it's paramount that each person we work with knows about this data, because data show us the complexity of the world we live in. So we need to analyze them and extract the human side of consumers. That's the side we have to focus on. Another component is what I called thinking only big. We often try and think big to think about big long-term projects. Orietta mentioned this in her presentation, although from a different perspective. What I mean here is that we should try and think small. We should create small, personalized touches for our clients, focus on details, because now it's much less expensive to retain existing clients and focus on the details of our relation than finding a new client. So we should invest and create authentic relations with our clients. A true, honest relation with our clients, a long-lasting relation. The third element, the third habit, is underestimating the great power of new generations. We all realize that new generations are important and so on. But we don't see new generations as end clients, actually. We see them just as young kids who don't have any purchasing powers. But actually, teenagers, the Gen Z, and the younger generations must be kept into consideration. It's important to focus on them Firstly, because they're different from all the other generations. They have a series of values, and brands are now building their brand ideas on those values. We're talking about millennials, for example, between 25 and 35 years of age. They are used to buy items and apparel online. But, for example, the Gen Z and the younger generations, people between 15 and 18, for example, according to a research, 90% of them prefers to shop in brick-and-mortar stores. It sounds like a paradox. There's a huge difference between one generation and another. The digital world is their natural environment. They are digital natives. And so for them, the physical experience is much more interesting. It's something new.
Ad amplificare le loro abitudini digitali, cioè il servizio al cliente.
But it's also important that physical stores reflect their online experience. Customer care must be at the highest levels.
Affascinati appunto dall'esperienza reale.
But these young people are very fascinated by the physical experience. And then we have the last habit. The last habit I think we should change. We should stop thinking that social networks are not shops, but are just showcases for our business.
Perché dobbiamo essere sui social, perché sono
social networking sites are very important, but they are not just showcases. People don't see them as real business tools, but actually all the major platforms, all the major players are currently working behind the scenes, focusing on social networking sites. And that's why we should focus on this too. Social media are very important for shopping, and they can also offer you a customer care tool at a very low price. Through social medias, we can get feedback from our clients, and we don't have to wait a lot to get their feedback. So this is a very important ingredient in the business of the future. Next slide, please. This is my last slide.
Per tutti noi,
It's a
io
sort
adoro
of challenge for all of us. I love this sentence.
È una frase che mi aveva detto
It's a sentence
marketing
that I heard from a marketing guru that I met some years ago, Gail Taylor. I was impressed by this sentence. It says, if you don't have fun with the problem, you will never solve it. This is my wish to all of you.
Nell'impegno che ci stiamo mettendo
It's a challenge to work together, facing these challenging times. So I invite you to engage your teams.
Per trovare una soluzione, insomma, è importante appassionarci al problema.
To find a solution, it's important that we work on it
La
lightheartedly.
presentazione, se avete qualche domanda risponderò con molto
This is the end of my presentation. If you have any questions, I will be glad to answer now or later on. Thank you for your attention. The floor is yours, Elena. Thank you, Francesca, and my big thank to all the speakers that have presented the slow fashion journey of the One Milano. I don't see questions in the chat box, so I believe that our presentations were sufficiently clear. As I said before, we will be happy to answer to any questions in the next days. You can contact the local New York ITA office, or you can contact us directly through our emails that you can find on the One Milano website. We will be waiting for you at our exhibition from 13 to 15th March, together with the exhibitions Meeple, Micam, and Fashion and Jewels. Thank you all and have a nice day. Goodbye, thank you.